Broadcasting from the First Valley on the western side of the Continental Divide. It's the Cari and Rob Show with your hosts, Cari Hermazinski and Rob Douglas.
On April 7th, the following exchange took place between our program and Congressman Scott Tipton. Congressman, I sent you a note this morning, and as I said in that note, I want to give you an opportunity to address an issue that's been come before our attention, and that is that your daughter took a job at Broadnet as a government relations specialist in Washington, D.C., the same month that you were sworn in as a United States Congressman. Can you give us a little background on how your daughter got that job as a government relations specialist?
Yeah, what that is, it's a private company, by the way. It does not work for the government. Everybody out here working for a private company has government relations specialists that's on there. She had an internship 2 years ago with this company. Did a good job. They were opening up the office, and they offered it to her before the election, and she'd accepted it. Okay, so the job offer was made to her prior to the outcome of the election last year? Right. All right, very good. Then last week, at the end of the week, Allison Sherry in the Denver Post reported in a piece entitled, Colorado Representative Tipton apologizes to House Ethics Panel for improper emails. The piece begins like this. Representative Scott Tipton may have run afoul of House ethics rules after his 22-year-old daughter dropped his name to land congressional business for her employer, a company that is run by his nephew. Tipton sent a letter late Thursday to the House Ethics Committee apologizing for multiple emails his daughter sent to members of Congress. She works as a government relations specialist for Colorado-based Broadnet. Given what took place on our program last April 7th, where we were the first to ask questions about the employment of Congressman Tipton's daughter with Broadnet, and given the further reports that come from the Denver Post, Politico, the Associated Press, and a number of other news organizations, both around the state of Colorado and nationally, we thought it only fair to allow Scott Tipton, Congressman Tipton, someone who's been a frequent guest on this program. We talk about him being our canary in the coal mine when it comes to following freshman congressmen to Washington this term, to allow him to come on our program and address this in some more specificity. Congressman Tipton joins us right now where he's on standby to board a plane back to Washington. Congressman, thank you for joining us on the Cari and Rob program this morning. You bet. Glad to be with you, Rob and Cari.
Let me focus you in on a specific portion of our discussion on April 7th. Please listen to this, and I've got some follow-up questions for you. Can you give us a little background on how your daughter got that job as a government relations specialist?
Yeah, what that is, it's a private company, by the way. It does not work for the government.
Congressman, you said there that Broadnet does not work for the government. Do you stand by that statement today?
I sure do.
The government, how are you defining does not work for the government? Broadnet.
They do not sell directly to the government. They do not sell directly to congressional office.
Okay, so Broadnet has a series of subsidiaries that
No, not subsidiaries. They actually, I've learned more about this. You broadsided me with that question on the previous one, and for point of clarity, where you'd mentioned, Rob, in the opening, that you'd send me an email as a heads up. I didn't receive that. But nevertheless, they do not sell to subsidiaries. These are privately held companies. Broadnet, as I have learned, is basically labeled as a technology company, and privately held companies that they have no part in lease that technology.
Congressman, Politico reports that Broadnet provides more than 100 congressional offices with teletown hall services via various vendors. So right. I would just have to say to the common person out here, we would say that Broadnet provides services to over 100 congressional offices in return for taxpayer dollars. So I'm having a hard time understanding the statement that broadband does not work for the government.
Right. I'm trying to draw a correlation there for you. It's in the sense that you license yours out to privately held radio stations. And do they pay you something for that? They probably do. that you have no connection with those privately held radio stations that carry your program. So that's probably maybe not the best example, but it's that same sort of thing where it's licensed technology that people use that you have no control over those companies or who they sell to, and that's it.
Then why would your daughter be writing letters on behalf of Broadnet to your fellow congresspeople?
That's something Broadnet probably better can answer than I can. The bottom line is that their job was just to make people aware as a technology company that, when we talk about transparency, I think one of the good things that's been coming out are these telephone town hall meetings where people can call in and visit with you directly and ask questions directly. And it was to create an awareness of that. And there are a multiplicity of vendors out there. In fact, the vendor we use is the same one John Salazar did.
Right, and that
it was the most cost effective.
And that vendor works via Broadnet.
No, that's inaccurate, Rob. What that vendor does not work via, they license the technology.
Okay.
That is an important distinction.
All right. Broadnet is owned by your nephew, correctly?
Correct.
Okay. You and your daughter share an apartment on Capitol Hill, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Your daughter went to work for Broadnet officially when?
I think she started right after the Christmas term.
When was she offered that job in relation?
It was my understanding, and I can be in error, that it was my understanding after she had done her internship here a year or so ago, that when she was getting ready to graduate from college, that they had a job for her. So,
was there an official offer made to her from
Rob,
Broadnet?
I can't tell you. We're getting into the weeds of family business that's there in her personal business as well. So,
okay.
I can't give you the date because I don't monitor it that closely.
Can you get us that date when you get to Washington?
I can probably ask her if she chooses. This has been very difficult on her because she didn't do anything wrong.
Were you aware that Broadnet licenses its product to subsidiaries that do work with Congress?
Was I aware of that?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. When your daughter accepted the job with Broadnet, a company that is co-founded, and run by your nephew, did you ever have a discussion with your nephew about the appropriate relationship between Broadnet's employees and Congress now that you were an elected congressman?
No, but, it's not my business, and they do not sell directly to members of Congress, period.
Congressman, when did you first learn your daughter was using her relationship with you in introductory emails when she was contacting congressional offices? When did you first become aware of that?
When a reporter came out, and if you really want to get into that, in Washington, they have flashcards when you get there to memorize all new freshmen names and their faces. And when she went in, people asked about the relationship, and so it was a point of clarity rather than trying to hide something.
And so how did you first learn that your daughter was using?
It was actually through the press. I didn't know it.
So the press approached you and said, "Are you aware that your daughter has sent emails to other?"
Yep. And again, I'll
offices?
underscore that was done innocently as a point of clarity.
Did
there's no there.
In those press contacts, there are a number of the news reports that suggest that there were rumors around Washington that an ethics complaint was going to be filed against you concerning these contacts. Did you learn of those rumors? First of all, did you hear of any of those rumors? Did you learn of those rumors prior to your letter to the Ethics Committee?
Actually, we were proactive because when I found out, I said, it's in your interest not to use my name. And secondly, then I was the one who went to the Ethics Committee, explained it, talked to Congressman Bonner, and he said, "You have no connection to this. There is not an ethics issue. But if you want to submit a letter, we'll get a letter back to you." So I was the one that was proactive on that.
Congressman Tipton, Politico is also reporting that your spokesperson, Josh Green, when asked for a statement on this matter, blamed this on Nancy Pelosi sending her top lapdog to Colorado to engage in some sleazy political attacks on you. So when did you become aware of the fact that Nancy Pelosi and her lapdogs were trying to dig up dirt on you?
Well, this I think anybody with clear vision on it can see this as just politics, and it's Washington politics, and this is the way they do business. And obviously, we're going to have a competitive race in the third. So,
well, what evidence do you have?
But what
evidence
were
do you
you
have
aware
that the
of that?
Democrats did anything on this?
Where did it come from? That's you're the ones that first raised the question. Maybe you can answer that for me.
Well, we don't know. We raised it with you on April.
I don't either.
We raised
then,
it,
Rob.
Scott. We raised it with you on April 7th. The other part of the question that I asked you on April 7th, let me play that for you as well and ask you. Okay, so the job offer was made to her prior to the outcome of the election last year.
Right.
All right. Very good. All right, and that's something we'd like to get from your office is when she specifically got the job offer. The other question I have, Scott, is I asked you, and I'll take you at your word that you didn't see my email earlier in the day, but I asked you at the beginning of that, what was the relationship between Broadnet, and you never mentioned to us that Broadnet is a family-owned company. Why didn't you mention that?
Well, first of all, like I say, it was a question, obviously, that hadn't even crossed my mind. I didn't receive your email to give me a heads up on it and give it some thought. And real honestly, Rob, if we want full disclosure, I've got one other nephew that's going to be starting a landscaping business. I didn't know where all you wanted to go with it, and wasn't aware that I needed to point out every family relationship.
You don't think Scott? I'm sorry. Maybe you think that's funny, but you don't think that it's relevant, given that I didn't know where your question was going at the very beginning of it, which you probably could gather from my answer. I didn't realize that I needed to try and connect all of the different dots on it.
Do you think the landscaping business of your other nephew will be providing landscaping services to 100 congressional offices?
I don't know if they're going to be doing. Cari, we can go on that direction. This is a privately held company that does not sell directly to Congress, and you can't get away from that very important point. This is licensed out. You've got a whole host of vendors that every congressional office has. They do not promote individual vendors. It's just the technology. That's an important role, I think, for members of Congress to be able to stay in contact with their office.
And I want to ask you again, because Josh Green, your spokesman, did tell Politico that Nancy Pelosi has sent her top lapdog to Colorado to try to dig up sleazy political attacks on you, or to start sleazy political attacks. What evidence do you have that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are behind this, and when did you first become aware of it?
Well, since, maybe an assumption from the standpoint that I had no personal connection with this issue at all, nor did my office. But we've had Steny Hoyer in Colorado soliciting candidates to run in the third, so that was an extension that Josh made.
Okay, and it's been announced this morning that Sal Pace is going to challenge you for the 3rd Congressional District seat. What is your reaction? We may have a number of Democrat candidates then, and that's fine. That's how our process works. All right, final question, Scott. In light of all that has transpired, do you think that you were transparent with this show and our audience on April the 7th when we asked you questions relating to the relationship between Broadnet, your daughter, and her job as a government relations specialist, and you said that Broadnet does not work for the government at that time? You feel that was forthcoming and that there was no need to even get back to us at some point and let us know that you'd learn more about how this developed, or let our audience know more about how this developed?
We're obviously going to maybe disagree on this, but I think given that, I was broadsided with that question, and it's something that we've had nothing to do with. I gave you the information that seemed reasonable at the time. I'll underscore again that Broadnet does not sell directly to, they only license it out to private companies who then market their product to members, so that was forthcoming.
Did you know at that time that their licensees did work with more than 100 congressional offices on the Hill?
Yeah. No, I had no idea.
When did you?
So they've been in business a long time.
When did you start using? When did you start using one of their licensees? When did you first speak to their licensee?
Actually, we picked up the same vendor that John Salazar used, and we've had one town hall meeting that we've used. I think one town hall meeting. And
you did not know that licensee was licensed through Broadnet?
We looked strictly at price, and I found out that they do license it, but that wasn't a consideration. We were trying to get the most cost-effective way of reaching our constituents.
Okay. You do live with your daughter on Capitol Hill. Did she ever raise the issue of the letter with you, and/or the fact that she was going to mention in the letter that she was your daughter?
Yeah, like I'll underscore again, this was almost a point of reference because people queried her as to whether or not she was my daughter, and she used it as a point of reference. And that was her stand on it. And when I found out about it, I said, don't do that, and she readily agreed.
Okay. Final question. Congress will vote tonight. The House of Representatives will vote tonight on an up or down bill on the debt ceiling. Your vote will be?
No.
Okay, very good. Scott, we know you're just about to board a plane at DIA for Washington. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today, and we'll look forward to talking to you again.
You bet. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you very much. That's Congressman Scott Tipton from the 3rd Congressional District of Colorado right here on the Cari and Rob Show. Can you give us a little background on how your daughter got that job as a government relations specialist?
Yeah, what that is, it's a private company, by the way. It does not work for the government.
What that is, it's a private company. It does not work for the government. Now, we're certainly happy to open up the phone lines and get your reaction. 888-810-1776, 888-810-1776. We live in a time, Cari, when I think, particularly in the last few years, and particularly what the Liberty Movement was about, was more transparency in Washington, that we wanted to stop the same old games that get played in Washington all the time, where it's who you know, not what you know, that gets a job, gets a contract, gets business done, get it, just the way the world works in Washington. I watched it for 20 years. I'm sorry. I personally have liked Scott Tipton in the past. I find his answers even more Clintonian today than, unfortunately, how Clintonian his answer was back on there. To say that I broadsided him with that question, put aside the fact that I'd sent him an email 4 hours prior to his being on to his personal email account that I have that he told me to use to communicate with him. He claims he didn't see the email. I can't prove otherwise, but it was Clintonian to say they don't work for the government.
This shows the disconnect between people in Washington and Checkbook Nation. What is undisputed, even by Congressman Scott Tipton, is that Broadnet provides more than 100 congressional offices with teletown hall services
through its licensees
via various vendors. Let's be perfect on the letter of the word here. Rob, they provide services to congressional offices in exchange for our taxpayer dollars. I would say that people in Checkbook Nation would clearly consider that working for the government. When Scott Tipton can't acknowledge that and talk to us on that plane, I think he loses the respect of people in Checkbook Nation.
Well, but, you know, he's got another nephew that's starting a landscaping business. 888-810-1776. We're going to discuss this more. 24 minutes after the hour. Okay, so holiday weekend. This all sort of blew up in the Washington and Colorado press on Friday. And so I sent a note this morning to Tipton's people, which also noting that the last two times we'd asked them to be on the program, we hadn't even heard word back. I've heard since from another member of his staff, that she didn't know of those requests. Well, it doesn't matter. I sent them to the guy, Josh Green, who's mentioned in the Politico piece, who immediately attacks the Democrats. Let's slow this discussion down and try to make it as clear as possible, the who, what, where, why, and when, what we know about this. Back a little bit before April 7th, might have even been a couple of weeks before. We had talked about this around the office for a while. And we're really just waiting. We didn't call and say, you got to come on our air and discuss this, but we had determined, not by any contact outside of our business, our studio, we learned for ourselves.
Nancy Pelosi didn't call me.
No, Nancy. Are you sure? Can you prove that? No, Nancy. So when Scott Tipton, tried to insinuate that maybe we did something what did he say? We blindsided him?
Yeah.
That we blindsided him with this. Blindsided. I sent the guy an email to his personal email account. And people in Washington live on their BlackBerries. They live on their BlackBerries. But be that as may, we had known for several weeks, maybe even a month, we had determined that Elizabeth Tipton, Scott Tipton's just out of college daughter, had taken a job with Broadnet and listed her employment as government relations specialist and listed the beginning of that employment as the same month, January of 2011, that Scott Tipton was sworn in. So we thought, well, that's a heck of a coincidence. Let's put that on the list of things to ask Scott Tipton next time he's on the program. Out of an abundance of not wanting him to feel we were just trying to sandbag him when he came on the program, I sent him a note that morning saying, I just want to give you a heads up.
4 hours before airtime.
4 hours before airtime. Want to give you a heads up. We have determined, it's come to our attention, I think is the way I put it, that your daughter is working for a company called Broadnet. Be that as may, he says, we blindsided him with the question. He's living with his daughter. He obviously knew that his daughter, here's the questions and the answers, the whole minute that we talked about this on the program on April 7th. Congressman, I sent you a note this morning, and as I said in that note, I want to give you an opportunity to address an issue that's been come before our attention, and that is that your daughter took a job at Broadnet as a government relations specialist in Washington, D.C., the same month that you were sworn in as a United States congressman. Can you give us a little background on how your daughter got that job as a government relations specialist?
Yeah, what that is, it's a private company, by the way. It does not work for the government. Everybody out here working for a private company has government relations specialists that's on there. She had an internship 2 years ago with this company. Did a good job. They were opening up the office, and they offered it to her before the election, and she'd accepted it. Okay,
so the job offer was made to her prior to the outcome of the election last year?
Right.
All right, very good. That's it. That was the totality of it.
And then we moved on to another topic.
Moved on to other issues, political issues, but specifically asked him how his daughter got the job. He doesn't mention that Broadnet is co-founded by his nephew since 2004. He doesn't mention, although he says they were opening up an office here. So a closer association between Broadnet, which is a Colorado company, opening an office in Washington, D.C., that sounds like a little bit more than we just have licensees and we don't know who the licensees work with, which is what he just tried to say a few minutes ago on here, and tried to use the same analogy to that we are a syndicated program and we have affiliates throughout the Rocky Mountain West, and we wouldn't know what those affiliates were doing. Well, we certainly know what business the affiliates are in. And we certainly know a little bit about them.
And we love our affiliates, and we do know them.
And we love our affiliates, obviously, and we have regular interaction with our affiliates. We talk to them about advertising. We prepare promos for them to promote our show. We do things that they request of us, just as you would have in a licensor-licensee relationship. Licensor-licensee relationships usually have very long contracts involved, and you certainly know what your business is. So, particularly, by the way, when it's your nephew's business and your daughter, fresh out of college, is going to work for that business, and, oh, by the way, you're living under the same roof as your daughter.
I mean, see, but here's the thing, Rob. This is the disconnect that we're talking about. It just so happens that, this happened to blow up in the 3rd Congressional District of Colorado, where we broadcast from. But it is making news in Washington, D.C., because it's a freshman Republican who's back there. And what did they all go back there saying? That they are aware of what's going on in Checkbook Nation, and they understand what we're saying. Transparency. Exactly. And we every single question I felt like we asked Scott Tipton, he just wiggled a different direction. And I think plain-spoken people wouldn't buy those answers.
Well, here was the problem with the original Q&A. Can you give us a little background on how your daughter got that job as a government relations specialist?
Yeah, what that is, it's a private company, by the way. It does not work for the government.
Does that not sound like someone who's trying to say, I don't even know much about that? What that is, it's a private company. It does not even work for the government. That is a Clintonian response. At that time, I have no doubt. Now, this is a judgment on the part of Rob Douglas. You can join in that judgment or not. You can join in the discussion or not. 888-810-1776. I have no doubt in my mind that when he said it's a company that does not work for the government, that he knew darn well that through licensees, it sells a product to the company, that whether there are licensees in between or not, it receives revenue through more than 100 congressional offices, including his, that use those licensees to Broadnet to provide their telephone town hall services, and that his daughter went to that family-owned business fresh out of college, no Washington, D.C. experience, hired as a government relations specialist. And it sounds, when you ask the full question and the full response, well, let's do it. Here it is again. Listen to the end of this when I ask him again about the daughter. Congressman, I sent you a note this morning, and as I said in that note, I want to give you an opportunity to address an issue that's been come before our attention, and that is that your daughter took a job at Broadnet as a government relations specialist in Washington, D.C., the same month that you were sworn in as a United States congressman. Can you give us a little background on how your daughter got that job as a government relations specialist?
Yeah, what that is, it's a private company, by the way. It does not work for the government. Everybody out here working for a private company has government relations specialists.
Let's stop it right there. Everybody working out here works for these companies, has government relations specialists, and he first goes out of his way to say it's a private business that does not work for the government. Everybody out here, these private businesses, have government relations specialists. To me, I'm sorry, that's either really trying to parse the language and be Clintonian when he knows what we're getting at is, how did it come that your daughter, fresh out of college, is working for a company as a government relations specialist and started the same month that you started in Washington? And he's trying to say, put Broadnet at arm's length or more distance from a relationship with the Congress that he was hired from, and from the government, not to mention that they've got 100 contracts with fellow Congress people that he rubs shoulders with every day. And so Clintonian at best in parsing the language. The reality is that there are private businesses all across this country who hire people that they call government relations specialists or government relations monitor or just a department of government relations. Why? Because the regulatory burden that gets created out of Washington, the tax burden created out of Washington, when you're a company of any size, and by the way, Cari, what is Broadnet, 8 million plus in revenue?
When they got an award here in Colorado for being a fast-growing entrepreneurial tech company in Colorado, in 2008, they were reporting that they had gross sales of 7.8 million. So I don't know what's happened in the last 3 years.
All right, now, not the biggest company in the world, but not a mom and pop store on Main Street, USA. And by his own acknowledgement, Congressman Tipton points out they were opening, they probably had gotten to a size enough that they were opening an office in Washington, D.C., which is what businesses do. You start opening up a lobbying office or whatever in D.C. Now, some private businesses do that, absent even having any contractual relationship outright or even through licensees to do what? Just to monitor what the squirrels in Washington are doing, the regulations, the taxes, the laws that might impact their business. That was what it sounded to me like he was trying to say, and why we didn't even add any more follow-up questions. If he had said, well, Broadnet sells telephone town halls via licensees to congressional offices, I think we would have had a few more follow-ups. Congressman, I sent you a note this morning, and as I said in that note, I want to give you an opportunity to address an issue that's been come before our attention, and that is that your daughter took a job at Broadnet as a government relations specialist in Washington, D.C., the same month that you were sworn in as a United States Congressman. Can you give us a little background on how your daughter got that job as a government relations specialist?
Yeah, what that is, it's a private company, by the way. It does not work for the government. Everybody out here working for a private company has government relations specialists that's on there. She had an internship 2 years ago with this company. Did a good job. They were opening up the office, and they offered it to her before the election, and she'd accepted it. Okay,
so the job offer was made to her prior to the outcome of the election last year?
Right.
All right, very good. And, of course, now he says he's not sure when the job offer was made. And you just pointed out during the break, Cari, that in response to our trying to pin him down on the date when the job offer was made, now he's fudging on that, and he doesn't really remember. We told him that we would like him to get that specific date and provide it to the program when he arrives in Washington today.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a big deal, right? Because Scott Tipton has supposedly proactively turned this over to the House Ethics Committee. The Washington, D.C. lawyer for Broadnet is quoted in the Political article. They've gone through it. He's reviewed what's been happening. He's, has some stuff that he's saying about it. But so if you think this is such a big deal that you've turned the information over, I should say, to the House Ethics Committee. You've told your daughter to stop doing it. The attorney for Broadnet's been reviewing it. I think you certainly know what the timeline is. And here's the thing, Rob. When I was listening to Scott Tipton on all these different questions that we asked him, Congressman Tipton, I was hearing, different answers or no answers. He was not on message. And when you have a story to tell, then I think it's easier to be on message. I mean, we asked him, why do you think the Democrats are doing this? Why do you think Nancy Pelosi and crew are after you? And he's like, well, I don't know. I mean, even alluding that maybe it was us. And that's what his spokesperson came out and told Politico. When asked by Politico what's going on here, instead of him saying, well, I've proactively, gone to the ethics office, he comes out and starts talking about Nancy Pelosi, her lap dogs, her sleazy political attacks. And we asked him twice, what evidence do you have of this? Or when did you first hear that the Democrats were after you? And we're not getting really any answers. Of course, he told us how he first learned about his daughter using her relationship with him in discussions with potential vendors. But when it came to the whens of learning how when his daughter went to work there, when he first learned about her using her relationship, when he first heard that Democrats were trying to dig up dirt on him, he didn't have answers to any of those questions. Look, this again, I have to say, it's undisputed that Broadnet provides more than 100 congressional offices with teletown hall services via various vendors. More than 100 translates to 20% of Congress for me. Seems like a huge chunk of business. Seems like a large volume of business. Scott Tipton did not deny that when we were talking to him. That's what Political is reporting. I don't care how many vendors are between Congressman Tipton and other congressional offices and this company that's owned by his nephew, where his daughter works as a government relations specialist. What we do out here in the real world, what we do in Checkbook Nation is we follow the money. And I will tell you that at the end of the day, Broadnet is the recipient of taxpayer funds for services they're providing to over 100 congressional offices.
I mean, look,
that is undisputed.
And his spokesperson, once again today, Josh Green, sent me, there was an exchange of emails, too lengthy to get in, and maybe we'll continue this into the next hour, what the heck. An exchange of emails between us and their office this morning, and Josh Green, the one blaming the Democrats, points us to the Daily Sentinel editorial, today's Daily Sentinel editorial, that says, is basically exonerating Scott Tipton. Says Elizabeth Tipton is employed by Broadnet, gives a little bit of the background. Late last week, before Elizabeth's actions became widely known, that's the key sentence from the Sentinel, Scott Tipton sent a letter to the House Ethics Committee apologizing for his daughter's sales pitch. And then they say that's a stand-up response to an unfortunate incident. Tipton didn't try to hide it or wish it away. He addressed it forthrightly. I'm sorry, I disagree with the Sentinel. I think that Scott Tipton, number one, had an opportunity back on April 7th, almost 2 months ago, to deal with this issue on our program. He tried to downplay it. Even if he feels he was blindsided, he's had 2 months. We are in regular contact with his office to bring us up today and say, I've learned more. There's more of a relationship there. Whatever. He knew this issue was out there. He knew it was hanging. And then the fact of the matter is that it's apparent to me, given the response of Josh Green to Politico, blaming it on the Democrats, that they had word that this was being discussed. It might not have been widely known in the Daily Sentinel's circles in their editorial board. Hello, come out from under the rock. They may not have known about it, but I think it was widely known in circles in Washington and got to Scott Tipton that there was perhaps a complaint going to be filed, and he did what anybody would do, try to beat him to the punch. Go in there first and put it on the table so you look like you're the one being forthright. I unfortunately have concluded he wasn't that forthright.